Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have back by popular demand, we have Gail Olmsted with us. And Gail is an author, and she was on 4 years ago, and she has a new book out. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you.
She came in from Charlton, and her newest book, the latest one, is Landscape of a Marriage, and it's based on fact. Truth, true events. Central Park was only the beginning. Welcome, Gail. What gave you the idea to do this?
Frederick Law Olmsted, who is a renowned landscape architect, is actually a relation related to my husband.
Yeah.
And for years, people would say to me, like, "Are you related to that Olmsted?" And I said to my husband on several occasions, "We need to find out something about this guy," because his aunt used to talk about that side of the family frequently, but she's been gone for a long time. So I said, we kind of need to figure this out. So I looked into what he did. We had been to a number of his parks over the years, in all over Boston, all over New York, Biltmore Estate, the U.S. Capitol, Yosemite, all over Chicago. His work is amazing. But I wanted to find out a little bit more about him. And the more I read, I found that he was a lifelong bachelor. Everybody assumed he was going to be a bachelor forever.
But he marries.
But he does, yes.
Okay, she'll tell you more about that one.
So at 38 years old,
he was still a bachelor.
He was still a bachelor, and his younger brother passed away.
Yep. And she was married.
And Mary was his sister-in-law, and she had 3 small children. And literally on his deathbed, his dying brother said, "Please don't let Mary suffer while you are alive." And Fred took that quite literally. Mm-hmm. A year later, asked Mary to marry him, and adopted her 3 children. So it was a true marriage of convenience, just to keep the family safe and to keep the family name. I mean, she was 28 years old. She had no way of supporting herself.
So they were 10 years
raising
apart.
children.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. That is fascinating. It's your husband's side of the family.
Yes.
Olmsted, is that where did that name come from?
It's English.
Okay.
There's a couple different spellings of it, but it's an English surname. Means something. I don't know what it means, but but it's frequently spelled Stead. Which, if you try to email me or try to find me, you won't, because there's no way. But
so Frederick Law Olmsted, was a landscape architect. This was back in New York, 1858. Mary, who was a young widow with 3 children, agrees to marry her brother-in-law. That's tricky business. Frederick Law Olmsted, who was the architect, who is acting on his late brother's deathbed plea to not let Mary suffer, just as Gail has told us. But she craves more than a marriage of convenience and sets out to win her husband's love. Beginning with Central Park, in New York City, Mary joins Fred on his quest to create a beating green heart in the center of every urban space. Tell us what the beating green heart is.
He was just so far ahead of his time in terms of not only his artistic skill, but the way he saw society and the way he saw people living. And he grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, back when it was very rural, loved tramping around outside. If you know Connecticut, he would walk from Hartford to Cheshire, Connecticut, which is about 50 miles. And spent a few days, and I think he was basically raised by wolves. His mother died at a very young age. He was only 4.
God. Where was his father?
His father was there, but
he
was not there completely. He was very supportive of his 2 sons, but he quickly married again and created a whole new family. So, there was money, but there wasn't a lot of room. Literally or figuratively for him. So he learned at an early age that he was going to have to be somewhat, self-sufficient and get out there. And he loved the outdoors. So when he saw in New York, Boston, Buffalo, Chicago, Rochester, all these urban areas that were hard to live in back then. I mean, the air was not clean. The sidewalks, if there were sidewalks, I mean, there were horse droppings. I mean, it was just not, what we think of a modern city. And his goal, based on what he had seen in Europe during his travels there, was that every urban center should have a beautiful green park in the middle of it, with walkways and areas for people to enjoy themselves, to reconnect. And, again, this was 170 years ago. He was really ahead of his time.
I was just going to say, this guy was a real forward thinker.
He was a visionary. I mean, he really was.
Is this now, we were talking about this before the show. The picture on this beautiful bridge spanning, is that maybe in New York?
That's the Gapstow Bridge in Central Park. And that's a photograph that my son took. We went last fall I was ready to use a stock photo, basically, through my publisher. I said, there's so many beautiful photos of Central Park. And a friend of mine, thank you, Sue, said to me, you have a son who's an amazing photographer. Why are you going to settle for something that's already been done? And I said, you're right. So we went to New York, and we spent the day just traipsing around the park, and I really liked the Gapstow Bridge. It's not the biggest bridge in the park, and it's not over the largest body of water, but there's something about it that to me is just beautiful.
We're talking with Gail Olmsted, and she is the author of Landscape of a Marriage, based on true facts. The famous architect Frederick Law Olmsted, and it's based on the history with him. I love of course I love swans, but did you put those in, or did your son be able to
the day we went, he said, Mom, there's no swans. And he said, because he knew that was kind of my vision. I had sketched it out, and I'm not all that artistic, actually. He's the one, I was going to let his vision come through, but he said, there's no swans. And I said, can you Photoshop swans in? He said, sure, I can. So because I thought swans would be a perfect kind of example of, apparently they mate for life, and they're a couple, and this is about a marriage, about two people.
Exactly.
So I
that lightens up the whole picture.
I thought so.
Yeah. Now, Landscape of a Marriage, that's a clever title, because he was a landscape architect.
Right.
And it talks about this, again, this was a marriage of convenience based on fact. And I had asked Gail in the beginning, do you think they fell in love, both of them?
I really do. There was enough correspondence. The good thing is there was a lot I could review and research about both of them. The bad thing was there was a lot I could research, so it was a question of sorting through what I needed to find to create the foundation. But everything I saw, the communication between them, seemed to be quite tender, quite not necessarily romantic, but quite loving. His salutations to her were, my dear wife at home, and things like that. I think there was a great deal of love between them. They also had 4 more children.
Yeah, I read that their children.
Something
that's a
was
big family.
Yeah, that's back then not everybody survived past childhood. So. I liked Landscape of a Marriage for a title. I came up with the title long before I really had kind of finalized how I saw the book. But I just thought a landscape is filled with, hills and corners and unexpected turns and twists and rocky areas and beautiful smooth areas, and just like, a marriage that lasted for 44 years.
He died. Frederick Olmsted, didn't he die in 1921? Was that in here?
She died in 1921. He died in 1903.
Okay, because my mother was born in August 1921. So she died just before that or after?
Mary died, I want to say it was May, but don't quote me, but it was 1921. She lived 17 years longer after Fred had passed away.
Did they live in this area?
They lived primarily in New York and then Boston. They lived in Brookline for 25 years. Mm-hmm. He actually died at the Mcclain, back then it was called the Mcclain Asylum.
Yeah.
He had, now it would be called dementia.
Oh, yeah.
But the last several years were not kind to him. His family rallied around, and Mary was there, and they were obviously in close contact. But ironically, the Mcclain Asylum, again, that's what it was called, was a project that he had designed the grounds for it years earlier, and they didn't. Apparently, they didn't accept all of his design. And when he got there, apparently one of the things he said was, "Well, see, if they had done it my way, this would be here and this would be here."
Yeah.
So that's where he ended up spending, unfortunately,
the
last 4 or 5 years.
Belmont. That is a really renowned now it's called a mental health facility, right?
Right.
But back then it was
An asylum.
And that was in the 1800s.
Yeah, he lived there from 1898 to 1903.
So he lived there and died there?
Yes. Yeah.
Where is he buried? Are they buried together?
He's buried in Hartford. She is too. Yeah, Old North Church in Hartford.
Have you seen
the
a
family
picture of
plot.
either of them?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh, there. I have some on my website. He was a very dashing
debonair guy.
Yes. Yeah. In some pictures, and older. As he got older. More frail, of course. He lost his hair and he had the long beard and the whole thing. But he was quite dashing, and she was cute. She was a little thing. She was less than 5 feet tall, and had apparently no patience for. She didn't suffer fools, that old expression, and she would think nothing of putting people right in their place if they were being silly or annoying or whatever. Yeah. From everything I read, theirs was a true marriage. I mean, there was really love. There was long periods of separation between them, but travel. You go out to the West Coast. Now it'd be a couple days and you're back. Right. Back then it was 6 months to a year. I mean, it was a longer.
Has your husband? Does he have like a? We have, a lot of us have family albums. Mine go back to my great grandmother and stops there. Does yours? Was Frederick your husband's great or great grandfather?
At one point, there were 2 brothers, Benjamin and Aaron. Benjamin became Frederick Law Olmsted's grandfather. Yeah. Aaron is my husband's great grandfather. So essentially, I think of them as cousins. More than anything, because their grandfathers were brothers.
Have they met at all? The side of the family?
There's, actually, Fred's youngest son, who in the book is usually called Rick, because that was his nickname, but he was Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., Rick. He, Dean's aunt used to talk about Uncle Freddie. Yeah. And she'd say, "Oh, yes, and we did this with Uncle Freddie." I mean, this, he was long gone by the time I came into the picture. But, she remembers him very, very well. They had family really all over New England.
All over New England.
And, so
Gail, how can they reach you and your book?
Well, I'm on, all my books are available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble. The easiest way probably is just to look at my website, which is Gail, Gail, Olmsted, OLMSTED.com.
There is a beautiful picture, and I love this. I like to see the authors either have their picture on the back page, or, don't be shy, scout the inside. It's just like her. You haven't changed in all the 4 years since I interviewed you. You were a marketing executive and a college professor before you began writing.
Right. I started writing while I was still teaching full time. Yeah. And but that was the perfect opportunity because I had summers off and I was able to just spend some time. But my first book, I got my first book out about 7.5 years ago.
Jeep Tour.
Jeep Tour. Yeah, based in Sedona, which is one of my favorite places. Yeah, Sedona, Arizona. And then I wrote 3 more, all contemporary.
Yeah.
And then, of course, landscape is historical.
Yeah.
And, I've been asked a few times, like, well, why did you make the switch?
Yeah.
And in a way, I would say, like, I really didn't. I just followed the story. And I'm drawn to a story of either a strong primary, main character that has something going on, and it's usually women. I tend to write women more, regularly. But there's something going on. They're looking for a second chance. They're looking for a do-over, an opportunity to reinvent themselves or whatever. That theme just stays with me in all my books. So in Landscape of a Marriage, it just happens to be set in the second half of the 19th century. But a lot of the things that the characters were going through, work-life balance. How do you, if you're basically a single mom raising children, how do you carve out a little bit of time for yourself? How about your friends, things like that. So I think the themes were, somewhat universal.
Yeah.
It just
strong
happens.
women. You're focusing on
yes.
strong. Now you were too young to retire, so you just said, "That's it. I'm going to try something new in my writing."
Well, no, I'm not too young to retire at all. Oh, no.
No?
Oh, no. AARP came calling years ago for
I know a lot of
me.
presidents, they used to be the joke, you'd get AARP in the mail, and it would end up in the basket.
Yeah, well,
But I remember as a kid looking at it on my parents' coffee table and go, oh, boy, have they changed their covers.
Yeah.
Oh, they had Paul McCartney on there.
Right,
They
right.
knew that the boomers...
All the baby boomers
and
needed,
the ex-Jenners are right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you just gave up that job.
Well, it had been years, and I was ready. I still teach part-time online, but I retired right at the height of COVID, which was not planned that way.
Yeah.
It just, that's when it seemed, that's when it happened.
Yeah.
But I was ready to make the transition. I really like, I like having the time to spend to write and to market my books as well.
Right.
And like I said, I do still teach. I teach courses in consumer behavior, business communications, things like that, but all online, which is it has its benefits certainly.
Sure, it's a Zoomy thing, right?
Yeah, Zoom, and then just a lot of it is just assignments and video conferencing, a lot of discussion boards, things like that. So
Where have you been appearing for your book?
I was at Tatnuck almost 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to be, actually, this weekend there's, in Brookfield, Mass, there's a local authors fair, so a number of us are going to pitch our tents and hopefully dodge raindrops. I don't know. We'll see.
You have a tent that goes over your table?
I do.
Okay, I'm curious. How expensive are those doggone tents?
They're not that bad. We got them for a different. We have a medium-sized one, and then we have a large one for having in our backyard.
Under 100 or over 100?
Over 100, but not. I don't think over 200 though. For like a 10 by 10. Worth it though if you've ever. If you've ever stood out in the sun or the rain.
It's not good to buy a soggy book.
Yeah, right. Wet books, no.
So that's where you've been. Have you gone to any... What's your radius? Do you stay within Massachusetts, or can you go anywhere?
I will go anywhere.
You hear that?
Yeah, I will go anywhere, really. I'm going to be, next month, Elam Park is a retirement community in Cheshire, Connecticut, which is right near where I'm from.
Yeah.
My best friend's parents both spent their final years there. It's a lovely, lovely facility.
And that's how she hooked you into it, right?
And they do a lot of program enrichment things, and said, oh, we'd love to have you. So I'm going to do a full-blown talk. I have slides, I have photographs. I'm going to talk about some of the work, read from my book, do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
a lot of the authors will say, well, I'll say, there's more places out there that I can find for you. And they'll say, well, why did you suggest Senior Center? I said, are you kidding?
Oh.
It can be for themselves, it can be for their grandchildren, their kids.
Right.
They're people too.
Yes, they are.
And they love to buy books.
Yes, they do.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. I sent, actually, Gail Suzanne, hello, Gail, I believe she's from Charlton, and I sent her over to our Mendon Senior Center. She's a good sport. She went in there and she sold a lot of her books.
It's
They didn't know her from Adam.
right. I'm doing something at the Overlook in Charlton
the
also,
Masonic,
which
yeah.
is just a beautiful. I've been there maybe 3 times and sold so many books, and then so many people will say, like, oh, I'm going to find you online, and they'll take my bookmarks, and they're they're very I mean, I'm a senior citizen myself. They're very savvy. They know how to use technology. They love to read. They love a good story.
Yeah.
And
Can you give a presentation there?
And at Overlook, I haven't scheduled one yet. It's
Yeah.
just going to be more of like a vendors fair type of thing. But
I'm sure they could get you scheduled to come in.
I think I think enough people have been to an Olmsted Park or have just a little bit of understanding, and then when they find out that the book is told from Mary's perspective. I came back to the project at the beginning of COVID, and I sat down and I read through it, and I said, I'm not connecting with this character the way I should. I rewrote the whole thing in first person. I rewrote everything into a first person narrative because I thought that's how I can show who Mary is.
Right. So I'm thinking that that's another great place, and of course there are places now, the book cafes. They're cafes, but they're combining it with authors coming in, and that's fantastic too. People are sitting there having coffee and listening to the author.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
I love book clubs also. I'm going to
writing clubs too.
Writing clubs, yeah. There's such a great interest in if it's a good story. I think people want to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of interest in publishing, and I mean I've never been anywhere where I haven't had at least 3 or 4 people say to me, how'd you get published? What's your story? What do you do? What's the secret?
Did you start off as a self-publisher?
I
love
self-published Jeep Tour. Then I found a publisher for my second book. They republished Jeep Tour, and they were about to publish my third book, and then they went out of business. So I self-published my first 3, and then I found a publisher for my 4th book. And that's when I was here the last time. No, this is my 5th.
The 5th. So did these people here?
This is Black Rose Writing in Texas. They're new to me.
Yeah.
They've been around for 12, 14 years.
Where are they located?
In Texas. They put out about 200 books a year.
Yeah.
And it has been, we're still in the honeymoon phase, but it has been just a wonderful experience with the other authors that published through them, with the management team, the marketing team. Distribution is wonderful. Communication is just the founder of the publishing house. He'll think nothing of emailing you back at 3 o'clock in the morning to answer a small question. It's just been
that's great communication.
So fingers crossed that relationship.
We're talking with Gail Ward Olmsted, and she is the author of Landscape of a Marriage. And this is based on fact. A woman who married her dying husband's brother. And it looked like a marriage of convenience because her husband wanted her to be well taken care of, and he talked to his own brother when he was dying, don't let her suffer. And so the two of them got together. It looked like convenience, but it turns into love. Where can they get a hold of you and your book?
All my books are available on Amazon or on Barnes & Noble. I believe most of them also at Target and Walmart and a number of independent bookstores. The easiest way to find out the information, though, the ISBN numbers, the prices and all, my website is gailolmsted.com, GailOlmsted.com is probably the one stop, to get to all 5 books.
Gail, so you have a very wide parameter. If someone wanted you to come and give a presentation, you'll go outside of Massachusetts.
I'm doing a bookstore, or a book club in Canton, Mass, late in October. Like I said, I'm doing the Elam Park in Cheshire, Connecticut in October.
Yeah.
I will go anywhere.
Overlook, I've seen the pictures of that. The Masons put
beautiful
behind
facility.
That. But I think it's pretty expensive.
It's very expensive.
Why? I don't get it.
I don't know.
I don't understand that. I'm not going to mention, but there is a place in Worcester, and we've had them on until I found out something. I'm not going to mention them, but they have very beautiful section for people with dementia and all this and that. It's really outstanding. No problem. But I asked them, so, I assume you take all insurances? No. They don't take Mass Health and Medicare. I'm like, part of you wants to speak up and say, what the heck are you thinking?
Right.
Do you know how many seniors have that? At least could you vote a few rooms? That really bothers me. It does.
It is. It's. I don't think our society's really figured out yet how to honor and respect our, our older generation. They. It's really, I think, very much it's left up to the individual families. And if there are no families, you just don't get the support you need.
I know, and assisted living is not covered, I don't think, either. I don't know about that so much. I don't really know, but have you ever thought, we got about 3 minutes left. Gail, have you ever thought of going to hospice and palliative care places? Because you know what? They read. Mm-hmm. And they might enjoy this very much.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I love, not necessarily I love the sound of my own voice,
That's
but
okay.
I love to read.
That's good.
I love to talk. I'm just one of those people. I know a lot of authors say, like, I just want to stay home and write. I don't want to get out and talk to people. Like, I want to finish writing so I can get out and talk to people. But it's and I think as restrictions and regulations start to kind of lighten up a little bit,
Sure.
I think it'll be easier to get into some of the places.
Right.
I've made a list of historical societies and libraries, and any kind of groups.
Societies will love this type of thing.
I would like to think so, and there's enough of them in cities and towns where he has major projects.
So you're your own publicist, right?
I'm trying to be. I mean, my publisher is helpful, but they don't know New England like I do.
Yeah, they don't know that.
They would give me the resources, but I'm the one that would need to coordinate events or activities or speaking, whatever.
So Gail is going to have her book downstairs at the dedicated local authors section, Landscape of a Marriage. Very good book. What's your next one?
I'm back to contemporary, skipping ahead about 150 years.
Okay.
And the main character is a disgraced former state's attorney who has an opportunity for a second chance to get her life and career back, and a witness from a case that she basically tanked and that ruined her career suddenly reappears.
Yeah.
And that complicates.
That's like a mystery. Yeah?
There's going to be some mysterious elements to it, but I think the main focus is going to be, what does this woman have to do to reinvent herself or have a restart in her life?
Sounds good. What's the title going to be?
That I can't say because it's a little too. I'll tell you off air.
Okay. And then we'll get her on.
Then we'll get me on when I finish, yeah.
Thank you for being with us, Gail.
Thank you so much, Dan. I
Gosh,
appreciate it.
this is deja vu 4 years ago?
Right?
It goes like that.
It does.
We'll see you next time on Be My
Thanks.
Guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.